Hello there, and welcome to the Drowsy Scientist channel. Tonight we're drifting into a quiet and ancient world that has unfolded alongside humanity for as long as we have walked the earth. A world rooted in leaves, in bark, in roots, and in the blossoms all around us. Herbal remedies are not just old traditions or soothing teas. They are the first medicines, the earliest experiments, and the beginning of our long relationship with healing itself. Long before laboratories and textbooks, people stayed close to the plants. They noticed what reduced pain, what calmed the mind, what aided wound healing and brought strength back after illness. Over generations, that quiet knowledge grew, passed from hand to hand, village to village, culture to culture. Under our feet, some of those plants continue to grow wild. Feet. Others now sit at the heart of modern medicine. Their stories, stretching from forests and fields into hospitals and research labs. This is a world where chemistry hides in petals, where timing and preparation can change everything, and where nature reveals both gentleness and power. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your body soften and allow your eyes to grow heavy. And let your mind unwind as we explore this fascinating world. Let's begin. Herbal remedies shaped medicine long before ever existed. Long before shelves of labeled bottles and measured tablets, healing lived in landscapes where people paid, knowledge expanded, attention to patterns, noticing which leaves eased pain, which roots slowed bleeding, and which teas brought sleep after long days. This was not guesswork, but slow accumulation shaped by survival. Entire communities depended on remembering what worked, passing that memory forward like a living library. Healing was seasonal, local, and deeply tied to place. A forest border, a meadow, or a riverbank could function as a medicine chest for those who knew how to read it. This early medicine demanded patience because effects were observed over years, not hours. It also demanded humility since mistakes carried consequences. Modern systems grew from this foundation, translating ancient observation into controlled practice. The core idea remains unchanged. Healing begins with careful attention to the natural world and respect for its power. Willow bark inspired aspirin, one of history's most widely used drugs. Long before modern laboratories could isolate molecules, people noticed something quietly remarkable about willow trees. Chewing the bark eased aches, reduced fever, and softened the sharp edge of pain. That knowledge traveled across cultures, appearing independently wherever willow grew. Centuries later, chemists traced those effects to salicylates, compounds that influence information and pain signaling. This ancient treatment was refined into a standard medicine taken by millions. What makes this story extraordinary is not just the outcome, but the process. A slow human observation became a global pharmaceutical cornerstone. The tree itself did not change, but our understanding deepened. Even today, the connection remains visible in chemistry textbooks and medicine cabinets alike. It is a reminder that some of the most transformative medical advances began with people closely observing how their bodies reacted to the plants around them. Many modern drugs began as folk plant cures. Folk medicine was frequently the result of disciplined watching rather than superstition. People observed repeating patterns, outcomes, and reliable effects long before they had words for receptors or pathways. These remedies spread through stories, apprenticeships, and shared meals rather than journals. Over time, certain plants gained reputations that endured for generations because they consistently delivered results. When modern researchers later examined these traditions, they often discovered active compounds that matched those long-held beliefs. The leap from hearth to hospital was not accidental. It followed curiosity and respect for experience. Folk cures were rarely random. They were shaped by memory, risk, and necessity. This bridge between tradition and science continues today as researchers still turn toward historical use when searching for new therapies. In many cases, the future of medicine quietly echoes its past. Peppermint oil can ease digestion by relaxing the muscles in the gut. Spasms, Peppermint tea and peppermint oil behave differently. Its concentrated form delivers specific compounds that interact directly with smooth muscle lining the digestive tract. These compounds can reduce involuntary contractions, which is why peppermint oil has been studied for cramping and discomfort. The sensation of cooling is not just pleasant. It signals interaction with nerve receptors that modulate pain perception. Delivery method is very important. Capsules designed to dissolve lower in the gut, avoid early release, and target the intestines more precisely. Peppermint oil stands out from other general digestive herbs due to this specificity. It does not stimulate digestion aggressively or slow it entirely. Instead, it encourages calm rhythm. That subtlety explains why it appears in modern clinical guidelines for certain conditions. What feels like a simple minty plant reveals surprising sophistication when its chemistry meets the nervous system, translating aroma into measurable physiological relief. Natural does not mean gentle. Dose changes everything. One of the most pervasive ideas is that natural things are always safe. Miscommunications in health culture. Nature produces powerful chemistry, not soft intentions. A substance that soothes in small amounts can overwhelm the body when taken carelessly. Even without the use of modern technology, this principle has been understood for centuries. Measurements. Careful guidelines were developed by traditional systems, which frequently took the form of warnings that were stories rather than numbers. The same plant might be used differently for children, elders, or the ill. Preparation was important. Timing mattered. Quantity mattered most of all. This awareness shaped respect rather than fear. It taught that healing requires balance, not excess. Modern toxicology echoes this lesson, with instruments of high precision, but the truth itself is ancient. Strength is not defined by origin. It is defined by interaction with the body and the wisdom of restraint. Foxglove led to a heart medicine still prescribed. Today, foxglove is a striking plant that is both tall and beautiful at the same time. Dangerous. Early healers noticed that it affected the heartbeat, sometimes improving weakness, sometimes causing harm. This dual nature made it both valuable and feared. Careful overtime use revealed that small, precise amounts could support failing hearts. That observation eventually guided the development of digitalis-based medicines still used under strict supervision. A rare collaboration between benefit and danger is shown in this story. The plant does not provide any margin for casual use, which forced respect and caution from the beginning. Its legacy lives on in cardiology, where careful dosing mirrors ancient restraint. Foxglove teaches that powerful remedies demand discipline. It also shows how a wild plant, once known only through risk, became a cornerstone of modern heart care through patience and precision. Ancient healers tested plants through generations of careful trial and error. No single person discovered most herbal knowledge. It emerged slowly, refined by countless small decisions made across lifetimes. An individual tried a leaf. Someone else adjusted the amount. Another noticed side effects and changed the method. Over time, dangerous options faded and useful ones remained. This process demanded memory and honesty because exaggeration could cost lives. Knowledge endured because it functioned sufficiently frequently to be trusted. Healers became historians of experience, carrying lessons forward through teaching and ritual. Some traditions even encoded warnings into myths, ensuring they would be remembered. This was a form of long-term research. Without written protocols, its strength lay in repetition and communal observation. While imperfect, it created surprisingly reliable systems that endured for centuries. Modern science now retraces these paths with controlled methods, often confirming what experience had already suggested. Honey can soothe coughs in children, better than some syrups. Honey has been used for comfort long before it was studied. Its thickness coats irritated throats, while its natural chemistry discourages some bacteria. In controlled comparisons, simple spoonfuls sometimes matched or exceeded common cough syrups for nighttime relief in children. This surprises many because it almost seems too routine. Yet, honey is complex, shaped by flowers, seasons, and bees themselves. Its sugars draw moisture. Its acidity creates an unfriendly environment for bacteria. Additionally, Its flavor encourages cautious swallowing. Importantly, using it necessitates age awareness, pointing out that even mild remedies have rules. This example reveals how effective medicine does not always arrive in plastic bottles. Sometimes it waits quietly on a kitchen shelf, backed by both tradition and modern observation, bridging comfort and care with remarkable simplicity. Plants make defensive chemicals that humans later turned into medicine. Plants cannot run from danger, so they defend themselves chemically. They produce bitter tastes, sharp oils, and complex molecules to ward off fungi, insects, and animals that graze. Humans learn to recognize these signals and over time repurpose them. What irritates a pest may calm inflammation. What halts a fungus may slow infection. These substances were created for survival rather than healing. Yet, our bodies respond in useful ways. This relationship is accidental and extraordinary. Plants never intended to treat human illness, yet their chemistry aligns with our biology often enough to be transformative. Many medicines trace their origins to these defenses, refined and studied. Across decades, it reframes healing as a partnership with evolution itself, borrowing solutions shaped by millions of years of natural selection rather than human design. Ginger can reduce nausea, including motion sickness and pregnancy queasiness. Ginger's warming bite is more than flavor. For centuries, it has been used to steady unsettled stomachs across cultures and cuisines. Modern studies suggest it influences how the stomach empties and how nausea signals travel through the nervous system. This makes it helpful in situations ranging from boat travel to early pregnancy discomfort. What sets ginger apart is its versatility. It can be consumed as tea, food, or capsule, each offering slightly different effects. Its familiarity makes it approachable, yet its action is specific and measurable. Unlike remedies that numb symptoms, ginger seems to work with digestive rhythms instead of working against them. This balance may explain why it remains trusted after thousands of years. It is a reminder that some of the most reliable remedies are also the most enduring. Some of today's most important drugs began as simple plant remedies. Behind, there is a quiet botanical ancestor to many modern medicines. These beginnings are often simple, with water-brewed leaves or hand-scraped bark. What? They were not replaced. Rather, they were refined. Scientists isolated active components, improved consistency, and studied safety. Yet, the original spark came from lived experience with plants. This lineage matters because it shows continuity rather than rupture. Medicine did not abandon nature. It learned to translate it. Even today, researchers search forests, fields, and reefs for new leads that are guided by ecological awareness and traditional usage. This ongoing relationship blurs the boundary between old and new. It suggests that innovation often begins by listening backward, honoring the past while building forward. In that sense, modern medicine still grows from roots planted long ago. Drying herbs can totally change their properties. The chemical makeup of a living plant does not freeze when it is harvested. In place, inside the leaves and roots, enzymes continue working briefly, reshaping compounds before moisture fully disappears. This creates a narrow window where transformation happens quietly. Airflow, darkness, and temperature all steer this process in different directions. Some herbs lose brightness as delicate oils escape. Others gain depth as bitter compounds concentrate and mellow. Traditional systems notice these shifts long before laboratory analysis, choosing sun, shade, or slow indoor drying based on desired effects. Even storage afterward matters because oxygen and light continue nudging molecules toward change. A jar on a warm shelf does not behave the same as one kept cool and dark. Drying is not simply about making herbs last longer. It is about guiding what survives the transition. In many cases, the dried version is not weaker or stronger, but significantly different, and it has effects that fresh plants never do. Garlic can modestly support blood pressure. Garlic gains in some controlled trials pharmacologically interesting the moment it is crushed. Cells rupture, enzymes. When you meet new partners, noxious compounds almost immediately form. These brief molecules interact with blood vessels in ways that scientists have been measuring for decades. In several Carefully designed studies, specific preparations showed small average improvements in blood pressure readings. These effects are subtle, not dramatic, but consistent enough to attract attention. Preparation turns out to be critical. Raw, aged, powdered, and oil-based forms behave differently inside the body. Cooking can quiet some effects while preserving others. Garlic's influence also depends on baseline health, meaning it does not act the same in every person. What makes this story compelling is not that garlic replaces medicine, but that a familiar food quietly engages complex cardiovascular pathways. It demonstrates how everyday plants can participate in physiological regulation without announcing themselves loudly or acting like instant fixes. Medieval monasteries acted as community health centers through herb gardens. In a time when formal medical care was rare, monasteries quietly filled the gap. Within their walls, monks cultivated gardens not for decoration but survival. These spaces were living pharmacies, arranged intentionally so that remedies for wounds, fevers, digestion, and sleep grew within reach. Manuscripts were meticulously copied to preserve knowledge. Many of them combined lived with classical texts. Experience. Travelers, villagers, and the poor often received care there when no other option existed. The gardens reflected climate and geography, meaning treatments evolved regionally rather than universally. This localized medicine encouraged observation and adaptation. Plants that thrived nearby became trusted allies. The fact that these gardens serve as bridges is what sets them apart. They connected ancient medical traditions to later European science, preserving continuity during turbulent centuries. A significant amount of herbal knowledge may have vanished without them, leaving modern medicine without crucial historical stepping stones. Turmeric contains curcumin, studied for calming inflammation signaling. Turmeric's deep, golden color hints at its chemical personality. Curcumin, one of its key constituents, interacts with cellular messaging systems that govern inflammation. Rather than blocking a single pathway, it nudges multiple signals toward balance. This broad influence explains both the excitement and the complexity surrounding research. Absorption is naturally low, which led traditional dishes that combine turmeric with fats and spices to make it more absorbable. Modern science later confirmed this intuition. Curcumin does not act quickly, and its effects accumulate gradually, rewarding consistency over urgency. It also behaves differently depending on the body's existing state. Sometimes doing little, sometimes offering noticeable shifts. This variability frustrates simple conclusions, but reflects the reality of biology. Turmeric's story illustrates how food, tradition, and research can converge on the same insight from different directions, revealing a slow-acting compound that speaks softly but persistently to the immune system. Indigenous healing guided scientists toward new medicines. Instead of searching, many modern discoveries began with listening. Researchers noticed that, throughout generations, certain plants were utilized consistently for particular conditions. That reliability suggested underlying chemistry worth investigating. Indigenous healers rarely framed their knowledge in mechanistic terms, yet outcomes guided attention effectively. When scientists followed those trails, they often uncovered novel compounds with measurable biological effects. This process saved time, resources, and guesswork. It also raised ethical questions about respect, credit, and preservation. Knowledge that survived colonization and disruption became a roadmap rather than a relic. In several cases, treatments, now considered cutting-edge, trace their origins to communities that never separated healing from culture or environment. This collaboration between observation and analysis continues today, reshaping how research begins. Instead of asking what might work, scientists increasingly ask what already has, honoring lived experience as a legitimate starting point for innovation. Chamomile tea can improve sleep quality in some human studies. Chamomile's reputation for calm rests on more than tradition. Certain compounds in the flowers gently interact with receptors that are involved in relaxation and readiness for sleep. Rather than forcing drowsiness, chamomile appears to smooth the transition into rest. This distinction matters. It does not sedate the brain, but encourages conditions that favor natural sleep rhythms. It is amplified by ritual aroma, and warmth. Effects, making the experience greater than chemistry alone. Studies suggest benefits for sleep quality rather than total duration, meaning people may fall asleep more easily or wake less often. Chamomile's safety profile also contributed to its widespread use across ages. Still, responses vary, reminding us that sleep is deeply individual. Chamomile's strength lies in its subtlety. It works best when paired with patience, quiet, and routine, reinforcing the idea that rest is cultivated, not commanded. A single plant can act differently, depending on harvest timing. Plants change constantly as they grow. Leaves, before flowering, carry different chemistry than leaves collected afterward. Roots thicken with storage compounds as seasons shift. Flowers peak briefly, then redirect energy elsewhere. Harvest timing captures a snapshot of this ongoing movement. Traditional systems paid close attention to these cycles, often linking collection to specific lunar or seasonal markers. Modern analysis confirms that concentration of active compounds can vary dramatically across growth stages. This means two batches from the same field may behave differently in the body. Timing also influences flavor, aroma, and shelf stability. If you harvest too soon, the effects may seem weak. Harvest too late and balance may be lost. Understanding this adds depth to herbal practice. It transforms gathering into a moment of choice rather than routine. The plant remains the same species, yet its character shifts with time. Lavender scent can reduce anxiety during stressful tasks. Lavender interacts with the brain through the fastest pathway available. Smell. Aromatic molecules travel directly from the nose to regions involved in emotion and memory. This bypasses digestion entirely, producing rapid effects. In controlled settings, lavender aroma has been shown to lower markers of stress during demanding activities. The effect does not erase anxiety, but softens its edges. This makes lavender useful in environments where calm focus matters, such as medical settings or high-pressure tasks. Individual response varies, influenced by sensitivity and association. Some people find the scent grounding, others neutral. What makes lavender compelling is its immediacy. Unlike ingested remedies that work slowly, scent shifts mood in real time. This highlights how healing does not always require internal chemistry changes. Sometimes influencing perception and nervous system tone is enough to create measurable relief. Some herbal effects come from altering gut microbes. The digestive tract hosts trillions of organisms that shape health quietly and constantly. Certain herbs influence this ecosystem rather than acting directly on human cells. Fibers, bitters, and polyphenol can encourage beneficial microbes while discouraging others. These shifts ripple outward, affecting immunity, metabolism, and even mood. The effects unfold slowly, often unnoticed at first. This explains why some herbs seem ineffective initially, then quietly transformative over weeks. It also explains why responses differ between individuals. Each person's microbial landscape is unique. What keeps a body in balance may do little in another. This microbial perspective reframes herbal action as partnership rather than intervention. Herbs do not always force change. They can sometimes create conditions that allow the body's internal allies to perform the work themselves. This adds a layer of elegance to plant medicine, revealing effects that are indirect yet profound. Licorice root can raise blood pressure, a dangerous surprise. Because it tastes like comfort, licorice root can be harmless. In tradition, yet, one of its natural compounds can shift the body's fluid balance in a way that mimics certain hormone signals. Over time, this can push sodium upward, pull potassium downward, and quietly tighten blood vessels. The unsettling part is how invisible it can be. A person might feel normal while their numbers drift in the wrong direction. This risk grows when licorice is taken daily, stacked across teas, supplements, and sweets, or used in concentrated extracts. Some traditional formulas limited duration or balanced licorice with other ingredients, not because they feared it, but because they respected its strength. Modern labels do not always communicate that nuance. Licorice is a perfect reminder that pleasant flavor can hide potent physiology, and the plants can carry consequences without any warning. Signs. Ancient Egyptian texts listed herbs for wounds and digestion. The medical literature of ancient Egypt reads like a window into early clinical thought. They talk about specific plant-based preparations for cleaning wounds, calming stomach distress, and supporting recovery after illness. These were not vague charms. They often included step-by-step methods, mixtures, and practical goals such as reducing swelling, protecting injured skin, or easing cramping. Honey, resins, garlic, and soothing gels appear as working tools in a system that valued what could be observed. The fascination is in the mindset. These texts show people treating the body as something that could be studied and helped with repeatable actions even without microscopes. They also reveal a society that recorded outcomes so knowledge could outlive individual healers. When you imagine those notes being copied, carried, and taught across generations, you can feel medicine becoming a shared memory. It is early evidence that careful documentation is itself a form of healing. Lemon balm may calm restlessness even in dementia care. Lemon balm has a gentle reputation, yet its most moving role may be in moments of confusion. In some care settings, it has been studied for easing agitation and restlessness in people living with dementia. That is significant because distress in dementia is often hard to soothe without causing unwanted sedation. Lemon balm appears to support calm while preserving alertness, helping the nervous system settle rather than shut down. Its aroma and plant compounds seem to interact with pathways linked to anxiety and emotional regulation. The effect is not dramatic like a switch flipping. It is more like a room growing quieter where a person can breathe and feel safe again. This kind of support matters because comfort becomes the goal when memory is slipping away. Lemon. The story of balm demonstrates how herbal remedies can safeguard human dignity, not by promising miracles, but by softening difficult minutes and making care gentler for everyone involved. Common plant names can hide entirely different species. A common plant name can be a trap, disguised as familiarity. The same label might point to different species depending on country, language, or even the local market. That matters because two look-alike plants can carry completely different chemistry. One might be mild and useful. Another might be risky, contaminated, or ineffective in ways the customer never anticipated. This confusion grows when herbs are sold powdered or chopped, where visual identification becomes almost impossible. Traditional herbalists often relied on habitat, smell, texture, and the plant's whole shape to avoid mistakes. Modern trade breaks that connection, moving herbs far from their origins and turning them into anonymous ingredients. This is why Latin names are more than academic formality. They are safety tools, preventing mix-ups that can change effects or create harm. Once you see how easily naming can mislead you, understand why careful sourcing is part of the remedy itself. Valerian root can shorten time needed to fall asleep. Valerian root is fascinating because it is not a piercing snooze hammer. In some studies, it appears to shorten the time it takes to fall asleep, especially for people whose minds feel too awake at bedtime. Its influence seems tied to calming signaling in the nervous system, encouraging a smoother slide into rest, rather than forcing unconsciousness. Many users notice the effect gradually, building over repeated nights instead of arriving instantly. For that gradual development makes sense. Plant whose chemistry is layered and complex. Valerian also has a famously strong scent, a reminder that potent compounds can be present even when the experience feels subtle. Responses vary, which is a useful lesson in itself. Sleep is personal, shaped by stress, routine, light, and expectation. Valerian's story highlights that herbal support often works best when paired with consistent rituals, patience, and realistic goals. It aims to open the door to sleep, not push you through it. Alcohol, tinctures, extract, chemicals water cannot reach. Water is wonderful for teas, but it cannot capture every secret a plant contains. Alcohol. Tinctures solve that problem by dissolving oils, resins, and other compounds that simply refuse to move into water. This creates a remedy with a different profile, sometimes stronger, sometimes just different in character. Tinctures also preserve plant chemistry for long periods, which mattered historically when fresh herbs were seasonal and fragile. The alcohol percentage is not arbitrary. Too low in extraction misses key constituents. Too high in delicate components can be damaged or pulled in unbalanced ways. Even the time spent steeping changes what ends up in the final bottle. Another twist is delivery. A tincture can absorb quickly through the mouth, which alters onset compared with a tea. This makes tincture making feel less like cooking and more like careful translation, turning a living plant into a message that is stable, portable, and still understandable by the body. Passion flower can reduce anxiety before medical procedures. Medical procedures can create a special kind of stress. Even when a person knows they are safe, passion flower has been studied as a way to ease that pre-procedure anxiety while keeping people mentally clear. That balance is rare and valuable. Instead of dulling awareness, passion flower appears to support calm through pathways linked to relaxation signaling in the brain. In studies, participants often reported feeling less tense without the heavy fog that stronger sedatives can bring. This matters in real settings where cooperation, memory, and communication are important. Passion flower's delicate appearance makes the effect feel surprising, which is part of its charm. It reminds us that strength is not always loud. The plant has a long history of traditional use, and modern research has tried to translate that tradition into controlled outcomes. Its story shows a gentle partnership between botanical support and modern medicine focused on the human experience of care rather than the procedure alone. Light and heat can quietly destroy active plant compounds. Herbs can lose their power without looking any different. Light and heat can quietly break down fragile compounds, especially oils and delicate molecules that give a plant its signature effects. A jar stored near a sunny window may smell fine while its chemistry slowly unravels. Warmth speeds oxidation, and oxygen does the rest, nudging active constituents into less useful forms. Traditional storage practices often favored dark containers and cool cupboards because experience taught what science later measured. Modern packaging sometimes forgets that lesson, choosing clear bottles that invite degradation. This is why two products with the same ingredient can feel unequal. Handling is now included in the treatment. When herbs are protected from heat and light, they remain closer to what the grower harvested. This is not about perfection. It is about preserving integrity. Herbal medicine is a relationship with time, and storage is one of the quiet ways we honor that relationship. Ashwagandha is studied for stress hormones and perceived calm. Ashwagandha draws attention because it touches stress from two directions at once. In research, it has been studied for effects on cortisol, a hormone involved in the body's stress response, while many people also report feeling calmer in day-to-day life. That pairing is intriguing because it suggests the body and the mind may be shifting together. Ashwagandha is not framed as an instant tranquilizer. Traditional use focused on resilience, the ability to withstand strain without breaking. Modern studies often reflect that slow strengthening idea. Benefits when they appear tend to build over weeks, which fits a plant that supports adaptation rather than quick escape. Responses still vary, reminding us that stress is not one thing. It can be sleeplessness, racing thoughts, physical tension, or constant alertness. Ashwagandha's appeal is its steady character encouraging balance instead of extremes. It is a plant that symbolizes perseverance, and its current story is about helping the nervous system feel safer inside everyday life. Standardized extracts reduce unpredictability in herbal dosing. Plants are shaped by weather, soil, harvest timing, and processing, which means two batches of the same herb can carry different chemical strengths. Standardized extracts try to solve that by setting consistent levels of particular constituents, so one capsule resembles the next. This matters for both research and real use because predictability protects safety and clarifies expectations. Without standardization, a person might take the same dose and feel different effects simply because the plant material changed. The fascinating tension is what gets lost. A whole herb contains many compounds that may work together, while standardization often focuses on one marker molecule as a proxy for quality. That can be helpful, but it can also oversimplify a living chemistry. Standardized extracts sit translating a variable natural material between traditional accuracy and contemporary precision into a repeatable form. They are not more natural or less natural. They are a tool for consistency, and consistency can be a form of respect when people's bodies are involved. Rhodiola rosea may reduce fatigue during intense mental work. This plant drew attention not because it made people feel energized, but because it helped them last longer under strain. In studies involving demanding cognitive tasks, some participants showed reduced mental exhaustion and steadier focus compared to control groups. The effect is subtle, which makes it interesting rather than dramatic. There is no rush or stimulation, only a quieter resistance to burnout. Traditional use emerged in regions where endurance was essential, not optional, and that context shaped how it was valued. Modern research suggests its influence may involve stress signaling systems rather than simple alertness. That distinction matters because fatigue often comes from pressure rather than effort by itself. Responses vary depending on extract type and timing, which explains why results are not uniform. Still, the idea that a root can help the mind feel less overwhelmed by prolonged effort continues to intrigue researchers, studying resilience rather than performance enhancement techniques. Some herbs concentrate heavy metals from contaminated soil. Plants absorb far more than sunlight and water. Their roots draw minerals directly from the soil, including elements humans would rather avoid. In polluted environments, certain herbs can accumulate heavy metals like lead or cadmium without visible damage. This creates a hidden risk because the plant may appear healthy while carrying unwanted chemistry. The issue isn't the herb itself, rather, where and how it was grown. Traditional gathering often avoided roadsides and industrial areas for this reason. Even without chemical testing, modern cultivation can still run into trouble when sourcing is careless. This reality explains why quality control matters as much as species choice. Testing soil and finished products protects users from invisible contamination. The fascinating part is that some plants are so effective at drawing metals that they are intended for soil cleaning. That same talent becomes a liability when the plant is meant for human use. Holy basil is traditionally used for emotional balance. In traditional systems, this plant was not framed as a cure for sadness or anxiety, but as a supporter of steadiness. It was associated with helping people respond to daily pressures with more composure rather than less feeling. That framing feels surprisingly modern. Instead of suppressing emotion, the goal was balance. Contemporary research has explored its influence on stress-related markers and perceived well-being, though results depend on preparation and context. What stands out is how often it was integrated into daily life rather than reserved for illness. Teas, rituals, and routine use emphasize continuity over intensity. This approach suggests emotional health was seen as something maintained, not repaired after failure. The plant's role reflects a broader philosophy where resilience mattered more than quick relief. Its long history shows how herbal traditions often addressed the human experience of stress long before science developed tools to measure it. Latin plant names prevent dangerous identification mistakes. Common names shift across regions, languages, and markets, but Latin names anchor a plant to one precise identity. This matters because different species can look similar while behaving very differently in the body. A harmless substitute can turn ineffective or worse, unsafe. Historical records contain examples where confusion led to poisonings or treatment failures. Latin naming emerged as a solution to that chaos, creating a shared reference system across cultures. It allows growers, researchers, and clinicians to speak clearly about the same organism. This precision becomes essential when herbs are dried, powdered, or extracted where visual cues disappear. Without it, quality control collapses into guesswork. The fascinating part is that this naming system quietly underpins safety without most people noticing. Although it is not glamorous, it saves lives. In herbal medicine, knowing exactly what you are holding is the first step toward using it responsibly. Magnolia bark contains compounds studied for sleep support. The bark of the magnolia long history in traditional medicine, particularly for calming restlessness. Modern research has focused on specific compounds that appear to interact with pathways involved in relaxation and sleep readiness. Rather than forcing drowsiness, These compounds may help quiet the mental activity that keeps people awake. This distinction separates supportive sleep aids from sedatives. Magnolia bark has also been studied for how it influences stress-related signaling, which may explain how it affects sleep at night. The bark itself carries a slight bitterness, a sign of active chemistry. Preparation methods matter greatly as extraction changes which compounds dominate. Its role in sleep support is not about immediate knockout effects. It is about easing the transition into rest. That gentle approach aligns with traditional views that sleep emerges naturally when tension subsides, not when the mind is overwhelmed into silence. Capsules delay absorption compared to teas or tinctures. How an herb enters the body can matter as much as what herb is used. Capsules must first dissolve before releasing their contents into the digestive tract, preventing them from being absorbed. Teas begin interacting immediately, while tinctures can absorb through oral tissues even faster. This timing difference shapes how quickly effects are felt and how long they last. A delayed onset is not a flaw. Slower release can sometimes result in smoother, longer-term assistance. Capsules also mask taste and allow precise dosing, which some people prefer. The key is understanding that form changes. Experience. Expecting the same response from every preparation leads to confusion. Traditional systems matched form to purpose intuitively. Modern users benefit from rediscovering that logic. Choosing between capsule, tea, or tincture is not cosmetic. It is a decision that influences rhythm, intensity, and how the body receives plant chemistry. Hops are not just beer flavor. They are traditional sedatives. Hops became famous through brewing, but their calming properties were known long before modern beer culture. Historically, hops were used to quiet restlessness and support sleep. The same compounds that contribute bitterness and aroma also interact with the nervous system. This dual identity is what makes hops fascinating. A plant associated with stimulation through alcohol also carries sedative potential on its own. In traditional use, hops were sometimes placed in pillows to release their scents slowly overnight. Modern research has examined their interaction with relaxation pathways. Though effects depend on preparation, hops do not significantly induce sleep. Their strength lies in gently lowering arousal. This reminds us that cultural context can obscure medicinal roles. When a plant becomes associated with one product, its broader history can disappear. Hops quietly demonstrate how familiar ingredients may carry overlooked therapeutic stories. Placebo effects strongly influence herbal study outcomes. Expectation plays a powerful role in how people experience herbal remedies. In studies, belief can amplify perceived benefits or create effects even when active compounds are absent. This does not mean herbs do nothing. It means the human mind is part of the equation. Herbal traditions often embraced ritual, preparation, and intention, which may have enhanced outcomes naturally. Modern research tries to separate chemistry from expectation, but that separation is never complete. Placebo effects remind us that healing is not purely mechanical. Context shapes experience. This is especially relevant in mild conditions where perception matters as much as physiology. Understanding this helps explain why some people swear by remedies that others find ineffective. It also encourages humility when interpreting results. Herbal remedies exists at the intersection of biology and belief, and neither side can be ignored without losing part of the picture. St. John's wort can weaken medications by altering liver enzymes. This part illustrates how herbal remedies can interact with the body in unexpected ways. Compounds in St. John's wort influence enzymes responsible for breaking down many drugs. When those enzymes become more active, medications may be cleared faster than intended. This can reduce effectiveness without obvious warning signs. Control of births, antidepressants, and transplant medications are among those affected. The danger lies in invisibility. A person may feel unchanged while protection or treatment quietly weakens. This interaction surprised researchers when it was first documented because the herb had a long history of use. It highlights why modern context matters. Combining traditional remedies with pharmaceuticals introduces complexity earlier systems never faced. St. John's wort is not inherently unsafe, but it demands awareness. Its story underscores the need for communication between herbal use and conventional care, especially when powerful systems overlap. Whole herbs behave differently than isolated extracts. A whole plant contains dozens, sometimes hundreds of interacting compounds. When one component is isolated, its behavior can change. Sometimes effects become stronger. Other times, balance is lost. Whole herbs often produce gentler, broader effects because compounds modulate one another. Absorption can be slowed or side effects lessened by this synergy. Extracts, on the other hand, are precise and potent. Neither approach is superior in all cases. They simply serve different purposes. Traditional use favored whole forms because they reflected what nature provided. Modern medicine often prefers isolation for control. The tension between these approaches shapes how herbal remedies evolve today. Understanding the difference helps explain why experiences vary between teas, powders, and standardized products. The plant is the same, but the conversation between its chemistry and the body changes depending on what is removed or concentrated. Cinnamon can slightly improve blood sugar indicators. Cinnamon's reputation is bigger than its average effect. Also, that contrast is exactly what makes it fascinating. In several human studies, certain cinnamon preparations have shown small improvements in blood sugar-related markers, especially in people already struggling with metabolic balance. The outcomes are not significant and not guaranteed, but they are consistent enough to keep researchers returning. Part of the mystery is that cinnamon is not one thing. Different species contain different profiles, and preparation changes what reaches the bloodstream. It also tends to be more effective in the background than in an emergency. That means it pairs naturally with meals, routines, and long habits rather than quick fixes. Cinnamon's story is really about scale. A common kitchen spice can have measurable physiological fingerprints, even if those fingerprints are modest. It reminds us that everyday flavor can carry quiet biology. Vinegar extracts minerals effectively in traditional remedies. Vinegar looks simple, but it behaves like a gentle chemical key. Its acidity helps pull certain minerals and plant constituents into solution, which is why traditional preparations often soaked herbs in vinegar for days or weeks. This created remedies that were shelf-stable, portable, and easy to dose by the spoonful. Vinegar-based extracts were especially useful for people who avoided alcohol tinctures and for herbs whose mineral content mattered more than their aromatic oils. The method also made medicine feel domestic and approachable, living in kitchens instead of apothecaries. This possesses a practical elegance. A common household ingredient became a solvent, preservative, and flavoring all at once. The result was not a mystical potion, but a predictable preparation, shaped by chemistry and patience. Vinegar extraction shows how many traditional techniques were quietly scientific, built from observation of what reliably transferred from plant to liquid. Fenugreek seeds can slow carbohydrate absorption after meals. Fenugreek seeds are small, but they behave like engineering when submerged, or they have a gel-like texture when cooked and are high in soluble fiber. That viscosity matters because it can slow how quickly carbohydrates move through digestion, softening the rise that follows a meal. When fenugreek is used consistently, this may be able to improve post-meal glucose patterns, according to some studies. What makes this compelling is that the mechanism is tangible. You can see the seed change in water, and that physical change hints at what happens inside the gut. Fenugreek also sits at the intersection of food and medicine. Used as a spice in many cuisines where daily intake is normal rather than medicinal, its story invites a different view of herbal support. Not every effect needs to be dramatic or fast. Sometimes it is about gently reshaping timing, turning sharp spikes into smoother curves. Conflicting trials often use different dosages and extracts. Herbal research can look messy on the surface, and the reason is often hidden in the details. Two studies may claim to test the same herb while using entirely different extracts, strengths, and dosing schedules. One might use a water-based preparation. An alternative might make use of alcohol extract. One might standardize a particular compound. Another might use whole powdered plant. Then readers wonder why results disagree. The disagreement is sometimes real, but often it is just mismatched inputs. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone trying to understand herbal evidence. Herbs are not single molecules. They are diverse materials that are formed through sourcing, processing, and formulation. Patterns emerge when those factors are aligned during trials. When they do not, the literature becomes noisy. This is not a failure of science. It is a reminder that plants are complex and research must be just as precise about what is being tested as it is about what is being measured. For insulin-like effects, bitter melon is studied. Bitter melon earns its name honestly, and that bitterness is part of its biological intrigue. Researchers have explored compounds within it that may influence glucose handling in ways that resemble insulin activity or support insulin sensitivity. The research is still ongoing, but the plant keeps people interested. A long history of traditional use for metabolic balance in several regions. Bitter melon also highlights an important theme. Foods can act like signals. A strongly bitter plant often contains potent chemistry that interacts with receptors involved in digestion and metabolism. Preparation matters here because cooking can change compounds and reduce intensity, which can be amplified by concentrated forms. This is why the same plant can be a humble vegetable in one context and a supplement in another. Sour melon's story is not about miracles. It is about a living plant that repeatedly appears wherever people have tried to understand and manage sugar balance, inviting careful study rather than hype. Honey-based syrups preserve herbs while soothing throats. Honey is both medicine and container. Honey that has been infused with herbs produces a syrup that can last, taste good, and cover up irritated throat and mouth tissue. This makes it ideal for remedies meant for coughing, scratchiness, or dryness, where comfort is part of the therapeutic goal. Honey's natural properties also help slow microbial growth, giving traditional syrups a practical advantage before refrigeration. The method turns harsh-tasting herbs into something people will actually take, which matters more than many realize. Adherence is part of effectiveness. Infused honey also delivers herbs slowly because it encourages small sips rather than quick swallowing. That pacing can be useful when the goal is gentle, sustained relief. That's why many traditions favored syrups for respiratory support. They were not only about chemistry. They were about experience, compliance, and the soothing physical act of taking the remedy. Berberine can lower glucose yet interact with medications. Berberine is a good example of a herb-derived compound that behaves with pharmaceutical seriousness. Research suggests it can improve certain metabolic markers, including glucose levels in some people. That potential raises the stakes while also making it more appealing. Berberine can interact with medications by influencing how drugs are transported and processed in the body. This means it is not a casual add-on, especially for people already managing diabetes or cardiovascular conditions. The interesting lesson here is that effectiveness and risk often travel together. A compound strong enough to shift measurable markers is also strong enough to collide with other interventions. The story of berberine inspires mature view of herbal medicine. Natural does not mean weak, and evidence does not automatically mean safe for everyone. It is a reminder that informed use includes thinking about combinations, timing, and individual context, not just the headline benefit. Traditional dose ranges emerged through hard-learned experience. Dose ranges in herbal traditions were not invented for elegance. They were carved out by the results. Over generations, communities learned that too little was test effort and too much can cause harm. This resulted in dosage instructions that frequently sounded qualitative, such as a pinch, a handful, or a short steep, a long simmer. Yet it reflected real calibration. Different parts of a plant required different caution. Roots may have a greater concentration than leaves. Fresh material could behave differently than dried. The practical goal was repeatability, getting similar outcomes from batch to batch without modern lab instruments. This is why many traditions developed standardized rituals of preparation. They were dosing tools disguised as culture. The fascinating part is that modern studies sometimes rediscover these ranges after expensive trial design, landing near the same boundaries that experience had already marked. Traditional dosing is not perfect, but it represents a long memory of experimentation where the cost of error forced careful attention and restraint. Milk thistle is widely used for liver support. Milk thistle's popularity comes from a simple idea. The liver does enormous work, and people want to protect it. The plant is known for a cluster of compounds, often grouped under the names silomarin, which has been studied for antioxidant and cell protective effects in liver-related contexts. Evidence varies by condition, but milk thistle remains widely used because it sits at the intersection of tradition, plausibility, and a generally favorable safety reputation when used appropriately. The organ is what makes it compelling. Targets. The liver is a chemical hub processing nutrients, toxins, hormones, and medications. Supporting it feels like supporting the entire body's internal economy. Milk thistle's story is also about persistence. It has survived centuries of use and remains a subject of modern research that suggests there is a factor in this situation that requires continued attention. It represents a plant, becoming a symbol of protection not through folklore alone, but through ongoing scientific curiosity. Natural products can both heal and harm depending on context. Context is the hidden ingredient in every remedy. A plant that is helpful for one person can be risky for another because bodies, conditions, and combinations differ. Even the same person can respond differently across seasons of life. Hydration, diet, stress, sleep, and genetics all shape how a compound is absorbed and processed. Timing matters, too. A remedy that feels supportive in the evening might be disruptive in the morning. Preparation matters since teas, capsules, and extracts deliver different concentrations and speeds. Most importantly, context includes what else is being taken. Herbs can amplify, block, or alter other substances in ways that are not obvious. This is why wise traditions treated herbal use as situational rather than universal. The fascination is that plants are not one-dimensional tools. They are complex chemical relationships. When used thoughtfully, they can support the body beautifully. When used, they can create issues with the same quiet efficiency when they act carelessly. Context turns chemistry into care. Cranberry can reduce recurrent urinary infections. Its most intriguing action is not about wiping bacteria out. A few compounds seem to interfere with how some microbes latch onto the urinary tract lining, making them easier to wash away before they settle in. That means it is discussed more for prevention than for clearing an active infection. Results in studies can look inconsistent because products vary wildly. Sweet juices, concentrates, and capsules can deliver very different amounts of the relevant constituents, and labels rarely make comparison easy. Still, for some people who experience repeated episodes, consistent use has been associated with fewer recurrences. Over time, what feels like a humble fruit becomes a lesson in strategy, changing the odds rather than fighting a dramatic battle. It also highlights a theme in herbal medicine. Some remedies work by shifting conditions in the body, so problems struggle to get established in the first place. Surgeons often request stopping supplements prior to surgery. Operating rooms are built around predictability because tiny shifts can matter when medications are precisely calibrated. Certain botanicals can increase the likelihood of bleeding, modify blood pressure, or alter heart rhythm in ways that make surgery more difficult. Others may affect blood sugar stability or change how the liver processes drugs used during anesthesia and recovery. Even mild effects become important when a person is fasting, stressed, and receiving powerful medications. Stopping supplements ahead of time is not a statement that herbs are bad. It is a safety buffer like confirming allergies or following fasting instructions. It also quietly confirms something many people forget. Products from herbs are active substances. They can meaningfully influence physiology, which is why clinicians want a clear baseline before making high-stakes decisions. In a strange way, the request is a form of cautionary respect for potency. Ivui contains antimicrobial compounds with strict safety limits. This herb gained attention for urinary support because certain constituents can convert into antimicrobial forms once they pass through the body. That targeted reputation can make it feel like a straightforward solution. Yet it comes with firm boundaries. The same chemistry that may discourage microbes can also irritate tissues if used too long or too frequently. Traditional guidance often treated it as short-term, reserved for particular times rather than daily upkeep. Modern safety advice mirrors that. Restraint, emphasizing limited duration and careful context. It is a vivid example of an herb that behaves like a sharp tool, helpful when used properly, but problematic when used excessively. This is more than just the plant's fascination, effect, but the way it teaches discipline. In herbal medicine, strength is not only about what a remedy can do, it is also about knowing when to stop. Some herbs are unsafe during pregnancy despite availability. Pregnancy changes the body's chemistry and sensitivity, which can turn ordinary substances into unexpected risks. Blood, hormone signaling changes, the volume increases, and the uterus becomes more responsive to compounds that might have meant little before. Historically, some herbs were used to stimulate menstruation or influence uterine tone are avoided because they may increase the chance of complications. Even seemingly gentle products can become complicated since nausea, sleep, and immune support each carry different safety questions during pregnancy. Store shelves can be misleading because legal sale does not equal universal suitability. This is where the wisest approach often looks like restraint rather than experimentation. The goal is not fear, but protection. Herbal traditions frequently included special rules for pregnancy, recognizing it has a unique physiological state. Modern caution continues that logic, reminding us that the most responsible choice is sometimes to pause, simplify, and choose only what is well supported for that stage of life. Golden seal popularity once pushed the plant toward scarcity. This woodland herb grows slowly in shaded forests, meaning it cannot rebound quickly from heavy harvesting. As demand increased, wild populations were collected faster than they could recover, and scarcity followed in many regions. The story reveals an overlooked side of herbal medicine. Remedies are not only about people. They focus on habitats. When a plant becomes fashionable, forests can be treated like endless supply chains, even though they are living communities with limits. Golden seal's situation also shows why cultivation and ethical sourcing matter. A remedy that helps one body should not quietly harm an ecosystem. The fascination is that sustainability becomes part of safety. If a plant disappears, knowledge becomes unusable, and pressure shifts to other species. Golden seal reminds us that herbal traditions depend on biodiversity and patience. In the long run, protecting the plant is a way of protecting the medicine itself. Children require different dosing logic than adults. A smaller body is not simply an adult scaled down. Children absorb and process substances differently because organs are still developing and metabolic rates can be faster or less predictable. Their nervous systems can also react more strongly to certain compounds, which is why a dose that feels mild for an adult may be too intense for a child. Traditional caregivers often relied on gentler preparations, shorter durations, and careful observation rather than forceful interventions. Modern caution for children echoes that strategy, highlighting the importance of taking into account age, weight, and the herb in question when calculating dosages. This matters most with concentrated extracts where small differences become large. The deeper lesson is about humility. With children, the goal is not maximum effect. It is an appropriate effect with ample safety margins. Herbal medicine becomes less about boldness and more about careful stewardship of a growing body. Thyme contains them studied for cough support. Thyme's familiar kitchen aroma hides chemistry that has been studied for respiratory comfort. Thymol, one of its notable constituents, has properties that may help loosen mucus and ease cough reflex irritation. This is why thyme appears repeatedly in traditional cough preparations, often combined with honey or warm water to make a soothing remedy that works slowly. Its scent itself can feel clearing, and that experience is not purely psychological. Aromatic compounds interact with airway sensations, helping breathing feel less tight or scratchy. Preparation influences outcome. A strong infusion captures different constituents than a quick steep, and essential oil is far more concentrated than a tea. This is a good reminder that form matters as much as herb choice. Thyme's appeal lies in being both ordinary and quietly functional. A plant you sprinkle on food can also be part of a thoughtful approach to comfort during a lingering cough, especially when gentleness is preferred. Allergy. Prune people can react to chamomile. Chamomile is often described as gentle, However, some people may experience unexpected reactions. This is probably the case for those who are already sensitive to plants in the daisy family, where immune systems sometimes mistake harmless pollen proteins for threats. Reactions can range from mild itching to more serious symptoms in rare cases, especially when chamomile is used frequently or in concentrated forms. The reason this matters is that chamomile is everywhere, appearing in teas, skincare, and blends that do not always highlight it prominently. Traditional wisdom sometimes treated new herbs with caution, recommending small initial amounts to test tolerance. That approach remains sensible today. The fascinating lesson is that safety is personal. A soothing herb for one body can be an irritant for another. Chamomile reminds us that herbal medicine involves individual biology as much as tradition or research, and that paying attention to early signals is part of responsible use. Sage goggles can ease sore throat discomfort. Sage has a long history as a throat herb, partly because its astringent qualities can tighten and soothe irritated tissues. When used as a warm gargle, sage delivers its compounds directly where discomfort lives rather than relying on digestion. This localized approach makes it feel immediate and practical. Sage also contains aromatic constituents with antimicrobial activity, which may contribute to a cleaner feeling in the mouth and throat during illness. The ritual matters too. Goggling slows breathing and encourages hydration, both of which can reduce dryness that worsens soreness. Traditional preparations often combined sage with salt or honey, balancing bitterness while keeping the focus on soothing irritated membranes. The method is simple, yet it carries a clever design. It uses direct contact rather than systemic action, making it a good example of how herbal practice often chose the most efficient route. Sage shows how comfort can come from targeting the exact place that hurts. Combining herbs with alcohol can become dangerously strong. Alcohol is not a neutral backdrop. It changes how plant compounds are extracted, preserved, and absorbed. When herbal products and beverages are combined, they may unintentionally stack effects on the nervous system, such as sedation, dizziness, or impaired coordination. Herbs that have a reputation for calming properties because alcohol already reduces alertness. Alcohol can also alter liver metabolism, changing how long certain compounds stay active. The danger is that the combination may feel fine at first, then intensify suddenly, especially when doses are uncertain or extracts are concentrated. Traditional tinctures were designed as measured drops, not as additions to cocktails. That boundary mattered. Modern habits sometimes blur it. The deeper lesson is about synergy. Two mild influences can become one strong outcome when combined. Herbal medicine works best when it is treated as purposeful, not casual. Alcohol mixing turns careful dosing into guesswork, and guesswork is where avoidable harm begins. Elderberry may shorten flu symptoms, but the evidence is evolving. Some people reach for elderberry should be taken at the first sign of fever because it has a long history of being known to help the body get through the winter illness faster. Modern studies have explored whether certain elderberry preparations can shorten the duration or intensity of flu-like symptoms, with some promising results and plenty of uncertainty. The most interesting part is why the evidence keeps shifting. Products differ in species, ripeness, processing, and concentration. Therefore, two trials might not testing the same thing at all. Timing matters, too, because early use may influence outcomes more than late use. Elderberry also sits in a tricky cultural space where enthusiasm can outpace data. The responsible story is not miracle or dismissal, it's meticulous curiosity. Elderberry remains a plant worth studying, not because it is guaranteed, but because it repeatedly shows up in both tradition and research as a candidate for gentle, time-sensitive support. Certifications help, but cannot guarantee perfect purity. A certification seal can feel like a promise, and in many ways it is. It can indicate testing for certain contaminants, verification of manufacturing standards, or confirmation that an herb matches its label. That is valuable in a market where quality varies. Yet, no single certification can cover every risk, every possible adulterant, or every supply chain surprise. Some tests look for heavy metals, others for microbes, others for identity, and the gaps differ by program. Even well-run factories depend on raw material arriving clean and correctly identified. That is why a certificate is best understood as a safety net, not an invincible shield. The fascinating lesson is that herbal quality is a layered problem. It involves farming practices, harvesting, drying, storage, transportation, and formulation in its final form. Certifications can reduce risk significantly, but they cannot abolish it. Combining is the key to true confidence. Seals with transparency, reputable sourcing, and clear documentation, and contains bitter compounds studied for immune support. This herb is famously bitter, the kind of taste that makes you understand why some traditions equate bitterness with potency. Researchers have investigated andrographies for immune support, especially during colds and respiratory discomfort, because certain compounds appear to influence inflammatory signaling and immune response patterns. Although the results of some trials indicate that it may lessen the severity of symptoms or shorten the duration of illness, depend heavily on dose and preparation. What makes andrographies especially interesting is its narrow window of usefulness. It is often discussed as an early stage ally taken near the start of symptoms rather than as a long-term daily habit. Its bitterness also shapes how it is used. Many people prefer capsules to avoid the taste, which changes how quickly it is absorbed. Andrographis is a reminder that plants can have strong personalities. Sometimes the first clue is not a chart, but the flavor itself. Enteric coatings protect sensitive plant chemicals. Some plant compounds are delicate enough that the stomach is the worst place for them to begin their journey. Acid, enzymes, and rapid breakdown can destroy certain constituents before they ever reach the intestines, where absorption is better. Enteric coatings are designed to solve that by keeping a capsule intact until it passes into a less acidic environment. This changes not only whether a compound survives, but also when effects begin. For herbs intended to act on the gut itself, delayed release can be the entire point, delivering the plant where it matters most. The coating also reduces nausea for some people, since bitter herbs can irritate the stomach lining when released too early. What feels like a small manufacturing detail becomes a powerful part of the remedy. Enteric coatings show how herbal medicine is not only about choosing the right plant, it is also about engineering the delivery so the plant's chemistry arrives in the right place at the right time. Astragalus is traditionally used for endurance and resilience. Astragalus is not famous for dramatic effects. It is famous for steady ones. In traditional use, it was often taken during ordinary life to support stamina recovery and the ability to handle long periods of strain. That focus on resilience makes it feel like a plant designed for real life rather than emergencies. Modern research has explored astragalus for immune-related functions and cellular protection, but its cultural role remains the most compelling story. It was often framed as helping the body hold its ground, especially during seasons when people expected to be challenged. Preparation matters because astragalus is commonly simmered for a long time, extracting deeper constituents into broths and decoctions. This turns it into a food like medicine, woven into routine rather than taken as a quick intervention. Astragalus invites a different mindset. Instead of chasing instant relief, it supports the slow architecture of strength built quietly through consistency and patience. Blood thinners can interact dangerously with certain herbs. When someone takes a blood thinner, the goal is precise balance. Too much clotting risk is dangerous. Too little clotting can be dangerous, too. Some herbs can push that balance in either direction by affecting platelets, blood vessel behavior, or how medications are processed. The risk often hides in stacking. A person may add an herb for sleep, circulation, or inflammation without realizing it influences bleeding tendency. Then a small cut bruises more easily, or a procedure becomes riskier than expected. What makes this especially important is that many people do not consider herbs to be part of their medication picture, so clinicians do not hear about them. The safer approach is not fear, but transparency. Pharmaceuticals and herbs can coexist, but only when interactions are taken seriously. This topic reveals a core truth of herbal medicine. The more an herb can change physiology, the more it deserves to be treated like a real intervention with real consequences. Marshmallow root soothes irritated mucous membranes naturally. Marshmallow root is remarkable because it works through texture as much as chemistry. When prepared properly, it releases a slippery gel-like substance that coats irritated tissues. Because of this, it is useful for dryness, itchiness, and discomfort in certain areas, like the throat and digestive tract, where raw irritation can feel relentless. The soothing effect is immediate in a physical way, like a protective layer forming where the body feels exposed. Preparation is key. A cold infusion often preserves the mucilage better than boiling, which can change the texture and reduce the coating quality. That practical detail is part of what makes this herb fascinating. It teaches that method shapes outcome. Marshmallow root does not rely on aggressive action. It relies on contact and gentleness, providing comfort by shielding delicate surfaces so they can calm down. It is an example of herbal medicine acting like a quiet bandage, not a battle. Keeping a safeguards patient safety with supplement list. A simple written list can prevent complicated harm. When people take herbs, vitamins, and supplements, even if the person considers them optional, the body perceives them as real inputs. In emergencies, surgery, pregnancy care, or new prescriptions require clinicians to be aware of the system's existing data. Without that knowledge, interactions can be missed, side effects misread, and dosing decisions made on incomplete information. The list does not only contain doctors. It helps the person. Also, look for patterns, like when a new product causes stomach problems, insomnia, or headaches. It also prevents accidental duplication where two different blends contain the same active herb. The most protective part is that a list turns vague memory into clear data. Herbal medicine becomes safer when it is documented. This is one of the least glamorous habits in health, yet it can be one of the most powerful. Writing things down is often the first step towards safety. Tea tree oil fights fungi, but should never be swallowed. Tea tree oil is a striking example of an effective topical tool that can be harmful when used improperly. On skin, its concentrated compounds can inhibit certain fungi and microbes, which is why it appears in products for athlete's foot and other surface issues. Inside the body, it is a different story. Swallowing tea tree oil can cause serious toxicity, including confusion, unsteadiness, and other neurological symptoms, especially in children. The risk is made worse by the fact that essential oils look like harmless flavorings, yet they are highly concentrated chemical distillations. A lot of plant material can be extracted from just a few drops. This is why labeling and how essential oils should be stored and why they should not be used for household wellness, but rather as potent medicines accessories. In terms of herbal remedies, tea tree oil teaches an important lesson. Root of use is part of the remedy. What is appropriate on the skin can be hazardous in the stomach. Context changes everything. The quality of herbs varies widely due to sourcing and processing. 2 bags of the same herb can behave like 2 different remedies. Climate, soil, when to harvest, and drying conditions all influence a plant's chemical profile. And those teas, capsules, and extracts all have distinct characteristics. Processing adds another layer. Grinding exposes more surface area to oxygen. Components that are delicate can be damaged by heat. Long storage can dull potency even if the herb still smells fine. Supply chains can also introduce substitution, dilution, or contamination when oversight is weak. This variability explains why personal experiences with herbs can feel contradictory. One person tries an herb and feels nothing. Another tries a different batch and feels a clear effect. The fascinating truth is that herbal medicine is partly agriculture. Before it reaches the body, it requires skill and care. Recognizing quality variation does not make herbs less credible. It enhances their authenticity. Plants are living materials, and their preparation is part of their story. When the results are more predictable, the quality is high, and the risks are lower. Aloe gel soothes burns while latex causes harsh laxation. Slice an aloe leaf, and you meet 2 very different substances living side by side. The clear inner gel is mostly water held in a soothing matrix, which is why it can feel cooling on minor burns and irritated skin. The yellowish Layer closer to the rind is latex, a concentrated mixture of compounds that can trigger powerful bowel contractions. Confusing the two has caused plenty of unpleasant surprises. This split personality is one of the best instruction in herbal remedies. The useful part of a plant is not always the whole plant. It is not optional to prepare. It is the difference between comfort and anguish. Aloe also shows how traditional knowledge often carried particulars, such as which layer to use, how to rinse it, and when to avoid it. A single leaf can hold both a gentle skin ally and a forceful parative depending on what you extract. Colonization disrupted herbal traditions worldwide. When empires expanded, they did not only take land and labor. They often interrupted the quiet pathways of knowledge, including how communities understood their local medicines. Healers were dismissed, languages were suppressed, and plants were renamed or replaced by imported practices. In many places, people were pushed away from ancestral gathering grounds, which meant the medicine itself became harder to access. Some remedies survived in family memory, whispered rather than taught openly. Others were recorded by outsiders without context, turning living traditions into museum fragments. The most haunting part is that disruption did not always look like a single event. It unfolded as decades of pressure, schooling, and policy. Yet, despite this, many traditions endured, adapting and resurfacing. Today, some communities are reclaiming botanical knowledge as cultural repair. Not herbal medicine becomes more than health. Here, it becomes identity, continuity, and the right to remember what the land once taught. Cannula supports skin healing with modest evidence. Chundula is the kind of plant people grow because it looks cheerful, then keep because it proves useful. Its bright petals have been used in salves and creams for minor cuts, dry patches, and irritated skin. Research suggests cannula may support healing by calming inflammation and encouraging tissue repair. Though the evidence is generally modest rather than dramatic, what makes it fascinating is how it fits real life. It is not a miracle rescue. It is a steady helper that makes discomfort less sticky and recovery feel smoother. Cannula also shows why topical herbs can be easier to study and use responsibly. The remedy stays on the surface where the problem lives. Traditional preparations often infuse the flowers into oils, creating a gentle carrier that spreads easily and keeps skin protected. In that simple process, you can feel centuries of practical wisdom. A humble garden flower becomes a quiet tool for repair. Sailors used citrus plants to prevent scurvy. Scurvy was a slow-moving disaster for sailors on lengthy journeys. Gums bled, wounds reopened, strength vanished, and the sea offered no fresh food to fix it. The breakthrough was not a new drug, but a fruit. Citrus, rich in vitamin C, could prevent the disease when consumed regularly. What makes this story so compelling is the length of time it took to become common practice. Observations existed, yet logistics, skepticism, and bureaucracy delayed adoption. Once citrus became part of naval routines, outcomes changed dramatically. This is one of the clearest examples of a plant remedy altering history at scale. It did not merely ease symptoms. It protected crews, improved survival, and reshaped what long distanciance travel could be. Citrus turned nutrition into medicine without changing its identity as food. It also revealed a truth that herbal traditions had long understood. Some of the most powerful remedies are ordinary ingredients used consistently. Before crisis arrives, witch hazel can reduce skin irritation. Witch hazel became a staple for a reason that feels almost magical when you first notice it. Applied to skin, it can tighten and calm, reducing the sensation of irritation and the look of redness for some people. The plant contains tannins which create that astringent effect, and it is often used after shaving for minor inflammation or for delicate skin that feels easily overwhelmed. What makes witch hazel interesting is its balance. Too much astringency can dry skin, yet in the right formulation, it can feel soothing rather than harsh. That is why concentration and added ingredients matter. Some products include alcohol, which changes the experience completely. Traditional preparations relied on careful distillation and dilution, emphasizing comfort over sting. Witch hazel shows how a plant can offer fast, visible effects without needing to travel through the whole body. It acts like a small reset button for the surface, making skin feel quieter and more settled. Cinca bark yielded quinine, transforming malaria treatment. In certain regions of the world, malaria shaped daily life like an invisible climate. The discovery that cinchona bark could reduce malarial fevers changed the possibilities of survival and travel. The active compound, later refined into quinine, became one of the first widely used treatments that directly targeted the disease's course rather than simply comforting symptoms. This is an account where the chemical composition of a tree affected trade and colonization throughout history routes, as well as military operations. It is also a story of how quickly a remedy can become precious. Neem has dangerous compounds that could harm children. Neem is often praised as a natural cleanser, but its strength is precisely the reason it needs caution. The tree produces compounds that deter insects and microbes, which is why neem appears in traditional skincare and agricultural use. Yet that same potency can create safety concerns, especially for children. Ingesting neem oil has been linked to serious adverse effects in young bodies, including neurological symptoms, which is why internal use is strongly discouraged without expert guidance. This contrast makes neem a perfect teaching plant. Natural does not mean mild. A remedy designed by evolution to defend a tree can be too forceful for a developing human system. Neem also highlights the difference between topical and internal use and how root matters. A diluted skin application is not the same as swallowing an oil. Neem's story is not about fear. It is about precision, boundaries, and treating strong botanicals with the same seriousness you would give any powerful tool. Opium poppy-shaped pain medicine and drug laws. Few plants have influenced human life as dramatically as the opium poppy. From its sap came some of the most effective pain-relieving substances ever discovered, changing surgery, childbirth, and trauma care. That benefit carried a shadow. The same compounds that quiet severe pain can also create dependence, leading to personal tragedy and societal crisis when availability outpaced safeguards. This dual legacy helped shape modern drug regulation, prescribing systems, and international policies, all built around the attempt to balance relief with risk. The poppy story is a reminder that medicine is not only chemistry. It's management, ethics, and human vulnerability. It also shows how a plant can force civilizations to confront uncomfortable questions. Who deserves relief? What level of risk is acceptable? How do you protect people without denying care? Consequently, a flower became a hinge point between compassion and control. It did not only change bodies, it changed laws, hospitals, and the language we use to talk about suffering. Anukica can reduce bruising when used topically. Bruises are visible stores of impact, and arnica has long been used to help those stories fade faster. Applied to unbroken skin as a gel or cream, an arnica is thought to influence inflammation and circulation in the superficial tissues, which may reduce swelling and discoloration. Uncertainty is a part of what keeps arnica alive, as some studies suggest benefits and others show mixed results. Interesting. It sits in the category of remedies that are not life-saving but quality of life improving that matters more than people admit. A tender bruise can limit movement, sleep, and confidence even when it is not dangerous. Arnica is also a lesson in boundaries. It is intended for external use because internal use can be unsafe. This sharp line between topical help and internal risk is common in herbal medicine, and Anka makes it easy to remember. It offers comfort, but only when used correctly on the right terrain. The traditional use of plants led to the discovery of artemisinin. One of the most celebrated modern anti-malarial breakthroughs began by looking backward. Researchers searched traditional medical texts and practices for clues, then tested candidate plants with disciplined persistence. From sweet wormwood, they isolated artesanum, a compound that acts rapidly against malaria parasites, and became a foundation for modern combination therapies. The discovery is compelling because it is not a simple tale of ancient wisdom being automatically correct. It is a dialogue-based story. Tradition suggested a direction. The method was refined through careful experimentation and the active component. Even the preparation mattered since heating could reduce effectiveness. That insight then emerged Through careful work, artisan's impact has been enormous, saving countless lives and reshaping malaria treatment strategies worldwide. This is one of the clearest examples of how herbal knowledge can serve as a map rather than a conclusion. Sometimes the majority of modern medicine begins with a plant and evidence that someone has protected for generations. Capsaicin cream reduces nerve pain over repeated use. At first, it can feel backwards. A cream made from the heat of chili peppers is used for pain. The key is what happens with time. Capsaicin activates specific heat-sensing nerve endings near the skin. Those nerves become less sensitive with each application, reactive, and their pain-signaling chemicals become depleted for a while. That gradual desensitizing effect is why it is used for certain types of nerve pain, including lingering discomfort after shingles or chronic burning sensations. The relief is not immediate, and that is part of the story. It rewards consistency rather than rescue. People often notice a warming or stinging phase before improvement, which is why instructions emphasize careful hand washing and avoiding eyes. Capsaicin is a reminder that herbal-derived treatments can work through the nervous system itself, reshaping sensitivity, rather than simply masking symptoms, and doing it with a molecule plants evolved to deter hungry animals. Traditional Chinese medicine catalogs thousands of medicinal plants. The scale of memory used in traditional Chinese medicine is remarkable. Over centuries, physicians and scholars recorded plant uses, preparations, combinations, and cautions in texts that were copied, debated, and expanded. This created a vast catalog that treats herbs like characters in a story, each with tendencies, compatibilities, and roles in a larger pattern. The system does not focus only on single symptom fixes. It describes balance, constitution, and seasonal shifts, which shaped how herbs were chosen and paired. Modern researchers often mine this catalog as a starting map, not because every entry is proven, but because repeated historical use can signal biological activity worth studying. The sheer number of plants involved also reveals something humbling. Human beings have tested nature that has endured through a variety of climates and dynasties, creating an enormous archive of trial, error, and refinement. It ranks among the biggest continuous herbal traditions ever maintained. Oat baths calm eczema itching through simple chemistry. This remedy feels almost too ordinary until you understand the mechanics. Finally, ground oats release starches and soothing compounds into water, creating a milky bath that coats irritated skin. That coating reduces friction, holds moisture, and helps calm the itch that makes eczema spiral. Oats also contain molecules that appear to support the skin barrier and reduce inflammatory irritation, which is why colloidal oatmeal shows up in modern dermatology products. The brilliance is how direct it is. You do not need to send anything through digestion or circulation. You bring comfort to the surface where the problem lives. The ritual adds value too. A warm soak slows breathing, softens tense muscles, and discourages scratching. It is a quiet example of herbal care that is more like building a protective environment than fighting an enemy. Sometimes relief is a layer, not a weapon. Ayurveda developed a parallel herbal system over millennia. Ayurveda grew in a different cultural world than Western herbalism, yet it reached similar depths through its own logic. It developed an intricate framework for understanding digestion, energy, and balance, then matched plants to those patterns with enormous detail. Herbs were rarely treated as isolated fixes. They were woven into food, daily routines, and seasonal practices make healthcare more like a lengthy conversation than a quick appointment. Preparations could be powders, GI-based mixtures, decoctions, or fermented tonics, each chosen for how it carried plant chemistry into the body. What makes Ayurveda so fascinating is its insistence that the same herb may not suit every person because constitution and context matter. Modern research sometimes studies individual Ayurvedic herbs, but the original system emphasizes relationships, not individual components. It is a reminder that multiple civilizations built sophisticated botanical medicine independently guided by observation, philosophy, and the reality of needing to stay well. Turpentine once appeared in Remedies, proving history made mistakes. Old medical books can be unsettling because they reveal how confidence and danger sometimes shared the same page. Turpentine distilled from pine resin was once used internally for various complaints including parasites and respiratory issues. People trusted it because it was strong and strength was often mistaken for effectiveness. Yet internal use can irritate tissues, stress the kidneys, and cause serious toxicity. The lesson is not to mock the past. It is to understand how desperate people were for solutions and how limited their tools were for testing safety. Herbal history includes brilliance, but it also includes missteps that harmed real bodies. This is why modern herbal practice values evidence, quality control, and humility. The past shows that natural substances can be hazardous, and that tradition alone is not a guarantee. Turpentine's story is a cautionary lighthouse, reminding us that progress includes learning what not to do and being willing to revise what once seemed normal. Hippocrates praised willow for pain relief. Long before modern pharmacology, Hippocrates described using willow for easing pain and fever, placing a plant remedy inside the earliest foundations of Western medicine. What makes this captivating is the continuity. A physician known for careful observation recognized a reliable effect from a tree that grew near water and along roadsides. In his world, medicine was not pills and prescriptions. It was attention, diet, and natural substances chosen through experience. Willow's inclusion demonstrates that practicality was valued in early medical thought. Results over mysticism. It also shows how botanical knowledge traveled through authority. A kind of cultural status was given to a remedy when it was documented by an influential figure. Durability, which increases its likelihood of being remembered and used again. This is a different perspective on herbal history than laboratory discovery. It is medicine as stored memories. The praise of willow by Hippocrates serves as a reminder of the oldest medical endorsements were for plants, and that the habit of learning from nature sits at the root of clinical tradition. Vitamin C and joint-supporting compounds are abundant in rose hip. When a rose falls its petals, it leaves behind a bright fruit that is quietly packed with nutrients. Rose hips are known for vitamin C, but they also contain other compounds that have been studied for joint comfort, including substances that may influence inflammation and cartilage-related processes. This combination is why rose hip appears both in traditional winter preparations and in modern supplements aimed at mobility. What makes rose hip fascinating is its timing. It is harvested when the growing season is ending, turning a fading garden into a source of resilience. Preparation shapes what you get. Gentle drying and careful storage protects sensitive nutrients while harsh heat can reduce them. Rosehip also bridges food and medicine elegantly. It can be tea, jam, syrup, or capsule, making it easy to integrate without feeling clinical. It is a reminder that plants often store their gifts in unexpected parts, and that a thorny shrub can leave behind something that supports the body long after the flowers are gone. Frankincense once served as medicine, perfume, and currency. Frankincense is a resin, a hardened tear from a tree that grows in dry, rugged landscapes. For ancient societies, it was not merely pleasant smelling. It was valuable enough to trade like wealth. Its smoked temples, its oil-perfumed bodies, and its preparations were used for wounds, inflammation, and oral care. This threefold role makes frankincense feel like a bridge between senses and survival. Resin is a tree's defense, sealing injuries and discouraging microbes, and humans learn to borrow that protective chemistry. The business routes built around frankincense shaped economies and cultural exchange, carrying not just goods, but stories and practices across deserts and seas. When you hold this resin, you are holding a piece of that history where a plant product could fund journeys and influence rituals. Frankincense brings back us that herbal substances were once valued for their effects on bodies and meaning, and were at the center of civilization. Boswellia resin is studied for joint stiffness. Boswellia is the tree behind. For a very practical reason, modern interest in frankincense and its resin has grown. The ability of bosic acids to affect the inflammatory pathways that cause joint pain has been studied. And rigidity. People often describe the goal not as numbing pain, but improving ease of movement over time. This is the kind of benefit that changes daily life quietly, like walking stairs without bracing or rising from a chair with less hesitation. Research results depend on extract type and dose, which is why some products perform superiorly to others. Traditional use often involved chewing resin or preparing it in specific ways, suggesting that delivery and ritual mattered. Boswellia's story is a good reminder that the same botanical material can be sacred fragrance in one context and mobility support in another. A tree's defensive sap becomes a human ally, and the modern lab becomes a new setting where new questions are asked of ancient resin. Some remedies work best as blends, not solo plants. Single herb stories are easy to tell, but traditional formulas often relied on teamwork. A blend might pair a soothing herb with one that improves absorption, or combine a strong ingredient with a moderating partner that reduces unwanted effects. Some combinations aim for layered timing where one component acts quickly while another supports longer. Others target a whole experience like tension, digestion, and sleep together, because real life rarely offers tidy, isolated symptoms. This approach can look messy to outsiders, yet it reflects an intuitive understanding of complexity. Modern research sometimes struggles to study blends because there are more variables, but clinicians and traditional practitioners often value them for precisely that reason. A formula can be adjusted for sensitivity, age, or season, like a recipe. The fact that blending treats plants more like instruments in an orchestra than as individual tools is fascinating. The goal is not loudness. It is harmony where the overall effect feels smoother, safer, and more complete than any one herb alone. Devil's claw can reduce lower back pain. This desert plant earned its dramatic name from hooked seed pods that cling to passing animals, but its modern interest comes from something quieter: relief. Extracts from the root have been studied for easing lower back pain with some trials showing improvements comparable to common non-prescription options for certain people. What defines it captivating is the kind of pain it targets: the persistent, slow ache that changes how you sit, sleep, and move through a day. The devil's claw is frequently discussed as inflammatory discomfort, and its effects tend to build over time rather than appearing instantly. That slow arc can feel more realistic than a quick jolt of relief, because chronic pain rarely responds to single moments. Its story also highlights how a plant from harsh landscapes can end up in modern clinics, not as folklore, but as a studied option when people want support without jumping straight to stronger medications. Drying time influences potency more than many people expect. Drying is not only about removing water. It involves deciding how long a plant's chemistry can continue to change after it is harvested. If drying happens too slowly, enzymes can keep transforming compounds and mold risk rises, both of which can ruin a batch. If drying happens too quickly, when heated to a high temperature, delicate components may break down before reaching a jar. That means timing becomes a hidden dial controlling strength, aroma, and reliability. Some herbs need fast airflow to lock in their bright notes. Others benefit from gentler, longer drying that preserves deeper qualities without scorching them. Even thickness matters since a dense root dries differently than a thin leaf. This is why professional growers monitor humidity and temperature like bakers watching an oven. Potency is not only grown in soil, it is completed in the drying room. Many disappointments blamed on the herb are really mistakes in the clock. White peony is traditionally used for menstrual cramps. In traditional East Asian practice, white peony is often associated with easing spasms and tension, particularly during menstruation. The fascination is that it is not framed as a numbing agent. It is framed as a softener, helping the body unclench when pain is driven by contraction and tightness. That perspective makes cramps feel less like a mysterious punishment and more like a pattern the body can be guided through. Modern interest has focused on compounds in peony that may influence smooth muscle tone and inflammatory signaling, though outcomes depend on formulation and context. White peony is also commonly used in formulas in combination rather than on their own, reflecting a belief that cramps rarely arise independently of stress, fatigue, and changes in circulation. Its long history suggests it was valued not for dramatic instant relief, but for making a difficult monthly experience more manageable and less disruptive. Steeping time changes tea effects dramatically. A tea is a timed extraction, not a fixed object. The first minutes pull out lighter, more water-friendly compounds, often bringing aroma and gentle effects. Heavier as the slope continues to steepen, constituents begin to dominate, and the taste can shift toward bitterness or astringency. That change is not just flavor. It might change how the tea feels in your body. A short steep might be calming and delicate. A long steep might feel stronger, harsher, or simply different. Subject to the plant. Because hotter water can extract more quickly, temperature adds another layer. Aggressively. Despite their simplicity, traditional instructions nonetheless function, like precise dosing guidance, telling you how long to wait and how to repeat a brew. This is why two people can use the same herb and report different results. They did not actually make the same tea. They made two different extractions from the same plant. Meadow contains salicylates related to aspirin. Meadow grows in damp meadows and along streams, and for centuries it was associated with easing aches and feverish discomfort. Its intrigue comes from salicylates, compounds in the same broad chemical family that later became famous in modern pain relief. Yet, meadow white carries its own personality. Traditional use often described it as gentler on the stomach than some harsher remedies, partly because it also contains soothing tannins. That blend of comfort and relief made it a valued plant in European herbalism, especially when the body felt sore and overheated. The scent is sweet, almost almond-like, which is a reminder that medicinal chemistry can hide behind pleasant fragrance. Meadow's story offers a different angle on familiar pharmacology. It shows that pain relief did not begin as a synthetic invention. It began as a plant growing near water, quietly, containing substances that are consistently recognized by human bodies. Oil extracts pull compounds water leaves behind. A different way to enter a plant is through oil. Water excels at extracting salts, sugars, and many gentle constituents, but it struggles with fat-loving compounds that refuse to dissolve. Oils can capture those stubborn molecules, including many aromatic and resinous components that give herbs their deeper character. That is why infused oils often feel especially suited to skin use, massage, and topical care. The process is slow and patient. Plant material rests in oil for days or weeks, and time becomes the solvent's partner. Temperature matters because while too much heat can result in extraction, too much heat can damage delicate components. Weak. The resulting oil carries the herb in a form the body recognizes through touch, scent, and skin absorption. It is not simply another preparation. It is a different chemistry, said oil infusion, to explain why the same herb can feel mild as a tea, yet remarkably present as a salve. Because water and oil listen to different parts of the plant. Research into fever FW migraine prevention. Fever FW became famous not because it stops a migraine in progress, but because it might make migraines less frequent. That distinction matters for anyone who has lived with the dread of the next attack. Research has explored feverfew for prevention, with results that are interesting but varied and heavily influenced by preparation and dosage. The plant contains compounds that may influence inflammatory messengers and blood vessel behavior, both relevant in migraine biology. Traditional use sometimes involved chewing fresh leaves, though many people found the taste unpleasant, which led to standardized products designed for consistency. Feverfew's story is a lesson in patience. Preventive support is not dramatic. It is measured in fewer ruined days, fewer missed plans, fewer mornings that begin with caution. It also highlights how migraine care often requires layering strategies as opposed to seeking a single correct answer. Fever FW remains compelling because it targets pattern, not just pain. Herbal effects can fade as compounds oxidize. Oxygen is an invisible editor. Once an herb is crushed, ground, or even simply stored with too much airspace, oxygen begins reshaping its chemistry. Some compounds gradually break down into less active forms. Others turn rancid, creating off smells that signal change. Has already happened. This is why a fresh jar can feel vivid while an old one feels flat, even if it looks the same. Oxidation accelerates with warmth, moisture, and repeated opening. which is why frequent dipping into a container can quietly shorten its useful life. Traditional practices often kept herbs whole until needed, not for ceremony, but for preservation. Pre-grown powders, a modern convenience, maintain trade stability. For speed. The intriguing fact is that herbal potency does not merely depend on plant includes. It is about what survives the journey from field to cupboard to cup. When oxidation wins, the remedy becomes a shadow of its original self. Butterbar may help. Migraines when purified correctly. Butterbar's story is a cautionary triumph. Research has found that certain butterherb extracts can reduce migraine frequency for some people, which is why it gained attention as a preventive option. The catch is purity. The raw, purine alkaloids, compounds linked to serious liver damage, can be found in plants. Risk. So safe products must be processed to remove them and verified accordingly. That requirement turns butterherb into one of the clearest examples of why preparation and quality control are not optional details. They distinguish between aid and harm. It also highlights a rare kind of trust relationship where you are not only choosing an herb, you are choosing a manufacturing standard. Butterbar shows how modern herbal practice sometimes depends on sophisticated processing to make an ancient plant usable in a safer way. When done correctly, it becomes a fascinating blend of nature and filtration where the benefit is preserved and the danger is deliberately stripped away. Traditional knowledge often guided modern scientific discovery. Many breakthroughs began with a simple question: why does this remedy keep showing up across generations and places? Traditional use acts like a spotlight, pointing researchers toward plants that repeatedly produced noticeable effects in real life. That does not prove a remedy works, but it makes it worth investigating first. Scientists have used this approach to narrow vast possibilities, saving time by starting with what people already found meaningful. The most fascinating part is how this alters the discovery narrative. It becomes less about lone geniuses and more about long community memory. Methods change from storytelling to clinical trials, but the initial clue often comes from lived experience. This is not romanticism. It is efficiency with humility. Traditional knowledge can also carry warnings telling researchers where risks may hide and which preparations matter. When modern science and old practice meet well, the result is not replacement. It is translation, turning inherited observation into measured understanding without erasing its origin. Willow bark increases bleeding risk in some people because willow contains salicylate-related compounds. It can influence how easily blood clots in certain situations. For many people, the change is small, but for others it can matter, especially when combined with other factors that already affect bleeding. Someone taking anticoagulant medications, preparing for dental work, or prone to easy bruising may face a higher risk than they expect from something sold as a simple natural option. The tricky part is that the effect can be quiet. There may be no immediate warning, just a subtle shift in clotting tendency. This is why traditional pain plants deserve the same respect as modern pain relief. The body does not care whether a compound came from a lab or a tree. It responds to chemistry. Willow bark is a good example of herbal realism where the benefit and the caution are inseparable, and where timing, context, and individual sensitivity decide the outcome. Herbal texts are preserved medical knowledge for centuries. Before modern textbooks, there were herbals, hand-copied books that described plants, preparations, and observed effects. These texts were more than lists of remedies. They were survival memory made portable. They were revised as each generation added its own, translated into new languages, and traveled across borders. Notes. Some included drawings to prevent misidentification. Others recorded where a plant grew and when it should be gathered. In eras of war, famine, and upheaval, these books acted like seed banks for medical knowledge, keeping practical care from disappearing. What makes them fascinating is how human they are. You can sense fear of illness, hope for relief, and the determination to write down what worked. Written herbals also formed bridges between traditions. A remedy could move from village practice into scholarly medicine, simply because it was recorded by someone. In a quiet way, these pages helped carry healing through time when everything else was unstable. Clove oil can numb tooth pain. Temporarily. Clove oil is famous for a reason you can feel almost immediately. Its key. Compound eugenol can dull pain signals and reduce the sharp sting that makes toothaches so miserable. This is why clove has been used in dental contexts for a very long time. Sometimes applied to a small piece of cotton and placed near the sore area. The effect can be surprisingly strong, which is both the appeal and the caution. Concentrated oils can irritate gums and delicate tissue if used carelessly, and they do not address the underlying cause of dental pain. Still, the temporary relief can be meaningful when a person is waiting for proper care and needs sleep, food, or a calm moment. Garlic oil is a reminder that some plant remedies work quickly and locally, similar to a small spice jar anesthetic. It turns a kitchen scent into a focused tool, but only within clear limits. Modern labs still search forests for new medicines. Even with powerful computers and synthetic chemistry, researchers continue to treat wild ecosystems like living libraries. Forests contain organisms that have been solving biological problems for millions of years, including defense against infection, pests, and environmental stress. Those solutions often take the form of unique molecules, many unlike anything that humans could possibly imagine. Scientists carefully collect samples, test the extracted compounds against specific targets, occasionally discovering entirely new chemical families. The fascination is that discovery can begin with something as ordinary as a leaf that resists rot or a bark that repels insects. But a lot is at stake. A single promising compound can inspire years of work and eventually reshape treatment options. This is also why medical conservation is important. When habitats disappear, potential cures disappear before anyone knows they were ever there. The wandering is not romantic. The search is. It is disciplined, expensive exploration driven by a simple truth. Nature still builds chemistry that surprises us, and the next breakthrough may already be growing quietly in shade. Myrrh has antiseptic history and oral health uses. Myrrh is a resin with a sharp, earthy aroma, and it has been valued for far more than fragrance. Historically, it appeared in wound care and preservation practices because its compounds can discourage microbial growth. That same antiseptic tendency is why myrrh has been used in mouth rinses and oral preparations, especially when gums feel tender or irritated. Resin is the tree's own protective response, sealing damage and resisting invasion. And humans learn to borrow that defensive chemistry. What makes MYRR compelling is its persistence across time. It shows up in ancient trade, ritual, and practical medicine, suggesting it delivered results people could recognize. Modern products, sometimes included for breath and gum comfort, though, concentration and formulation matter for tolerance. Myrrh also highlights how oral health sits at the intersection of comfort and hygiene. A plant resin can influence both sensation and microbial balance, offering a traditional tool that still feels relevant in modern routines. Herbal safety depends on species, dose, and preparation. Two people can say they took the same herb and mean something completely different. One might have used a gentle tea. Another might have taken a concentrated extract. Prior to that, species are important. A common name can hide a different plant entirely with a different chemical profile and different risks. Dose is the next gatekeeper. A small amount can be supportive while a large amount can overwhelm the body or cause side effects. Preparation is the final switch. Drying, heating, fermenting, and extracting can all change what chemicals are present and how strongly they act. This is why responsible herbal practice does not treat plants like harmless decorations. They are treated like active materials by it that need context. The fascinating truth is that safety is not a single label you can stamp on an herb forever. It is a relationship between a specific plant, a specific form, and a specific person in a specific moment. When those parts align, herbs can be remarkably helpful. When they do not, problems appear. Certain aromas of plants can have a direct impact on mood. Smell is one of the fastest methods of entering the nervous system. Aromatic molecules reach receptors in the nose and send signals straight to brain regions involved in memory and emotion. That is why a scent can shift your state before you even finish a thought. Certain plant aromas have been studied for effects on calm, alertness, or stress response during challenging tasks. The power is associative as well as chemical. If a scent is linked to safety, the body may soften. If it is linked to discomfort, the body may tense. This makes aroma both personal and surprisingly measurable. It also explains the appearance of aromatic herbs in rituals across cultures, from bedtime routines to sacred ceremonies. The fascinating part is that the medicine can be in the air, requiring no swallowing at all. A plant's volatile oils become a message delivered through breath, influencing mood through sensation, memory, and neurobiology at the same time. Many herbs act slowly, rewarding patience over immediacy. Some treatments don't feel like switches at all. It's as if the weather is changing. Many herbs influence systems that shift gradually, such as inflammation tone, stress regulation, or digestion patterns that build over days. This can frustrate people expecting instant results, but it also reveals a different philosophy of care. When used slowly, slow herbs frequently taken regularly, in conjunction with routines that support rather than challenge the body. Traditional practices frequently reflected this, emphasizing seasons, daily habits, and steady support instead of dramatic interventions. The fascination is that slow action can be a form of gentleness, without being sluggish. A gradual effect may mean fewer side effects and a more sustainable outcome. It also encourages better observation because you start noticing the smallest changes, like feeling less receptive to stress. Many herbs reward attention, not urgency. They invite a relationship, rather than a transaction. And that mindset can change how a person thinks about healing itself. Governing of supplements differs widely between countries. A bottle of herbal capsules can be produced under very different rules depending on where it is sold. In some countries, certain products are treated almost like medicines with strict requirements for evidence, manufacturing controls, and labeling. In others, they are regulated more like foods, which can allow broader claims and looser oversight. This difference affects everything from purity testing to how quickly unsafe products are removed. It also shapes consumer expectations. People may assume a label means the same thing everywhere when it does not. The interesting result is that herbal medicine becomes partially geopolitical. A plant is the same, but the safety net around it changes at borders. This is why travelers sometimes notice different formulations, different warnings, and different availability for the same herb. Understanding regulation does not make herbs less appealing. It makes the landscape clearer. It teaches that choosing supplements is not only about the plant, but about the systems that verify identity, quality, and truthfulness in marketing. Herbal remedies work best when evidence, quality, and wisdom align. The most satisfying outcomes in herbal medicine happen when three things meet. Evidence provides guidance about what tends to work and what tends to be risky. Quality ensures the plant is truly what the label claims, clean and potent enough to matter. Knowledge is the human part, knowing when to use something, when to wait, and when to choose a different approach entirely. When one of these is missing, disappointment grows. A well-studied herb can still fail if the product is poor. A high-quality herb can still cause problems when applied improperly. A wise tradition can still benefit from modern testing to improve consistency and safety. The fascination is that herbal medicine is not primitive or modern. It is both, and it develops strongest at the overlap. Alignment creates clarity. You can feel it, doing something real in a way that is predictable and respectful of the body. This final idea turns herbal remedies from a risky endeavor to a skilled trade in which expertise, honesty, and judicious use. As we reach the end of our journey tonight, you might notice how wide and quietly connected this world has become. Leaves, roots, bark, flowers, resins, and seeds have carried us across centuries, across cultures, and across landscapes. From forest floors and desert trees to kitchens, herbal remedies from gardens and early laboratories have demonstrated how deeply human curiosity is woven into nature itself. These plants were not just ingredients. They were companions, teachers, and starting points. They shaped medicine, influenced science, and reminded us again and again that healing has always been a dialogue between observation and patience. Now that dialogue can soften. You do not need to remember every detail or name. Let the ideas settle like pressed leaves. Inside an old book, let the images fade into something gentler. Imagine, the still fields were illuminated by moonlight, the roots held firm in the ground, and regardless of whether we are awake to see it, the slow growth is going on. This information does not require effort anymore. It is content to simply be here with you. If you've had fun floating around this gentle journey, you're always welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a below quiet thought. It helps this space reach other curious minds who might be winding down too. And if you happen to still be awake, there will be another video waiting on the screen, ready to carry you a little further into calm and curiosity. But for now, there is nothing else to do. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders sink. Allow the day to loosen its grip, knowing you can return to these ideas whenever you wish. Sleep well and good night.